The living flesh. Pause at 10:01. Our telephone began to ring. The sound penetrated the two closed doors between Jane's study and the living room, where we were. I disliked interrupting the session, so I let it ring, feeling uneasy all the while. Jane, entranced, seemed not to hear it. She receives more and more calls these days. Now, when either of us picks up the telephone, we're prepared to talk to a person from any part of the country. Earlier this morning, for instance, Jane took a call from the High Sierra country in California. Dictation. Chapter 7. The Living Flesh. Give us a moment. Often individuals go overboard, forgetting that ideas have their own vitality. Such people make divisions where basically there are none. They consider ideas as completely mental properties, separate from their concept of the body. They think ideas reside in their heads. Who, for example, imagines that an idea is alive in his elbow or knee or toe? Generally, people believe that ideas have little to do with the living flesh. The flesh seems physical, and ideas do not. Those given to love of the intellect often make an unnecessary separation between the world of concepts and that of the flesh. While it is true that the body is the living materialization of idea, it is also true that these ideas form an active, responsive, alive body. The body is not just a tool to be used. It is not just a vehicle for the spirit. It is the spirit in flesh. You impose your ideas upon it and largely affect its health and well-being through your conscious beliefs. But the body is composed of living, responding atoms and molecules. These have their own consciousness alive in matter, their drive to exist and be within the framework of their own nature. They compose the cells, and these combine to form the organs. The organs possess the combined consciousnesses of each of the cells within them, and in their way, the organs sense their own identity. They have purpose. They have a purpose. That function they provide within the organism as a whole. This cooperation of consciousness continues so that you have a body consciousness that is vital, that strives to maintain its own equilibrium and health. The stuff of the body should not be considered as some metaphysical result, then, but as a living gestate of responsive flesh. Your body is composed of other living entities, in other words. Though you organize this living material, it has its own right to fulfillment and existence. You are not a soul encased in inert clay. The house of clay does not immediately deteriorate when you leave it. It disintegrates at its own rate. It is no longer organized by your own domain. The life of its atoms and molecules and cells is translated into other living, natural forms. Your perception is merely that which you are aware of. Even the atoms and molecules have their own fine vision and appreciate their environment in their own way. The same power that moves your mind forms your body. There is no difference between the energy that shapes your ideas and the energy that grows a flower or that heals your finger if you burn it. The soul does not exist apart from nature. It is not thrust into nature. Nature is the soul in flesh, in whatever its materializations. The flesh is as spiritual as the soul, and the soul is as natural as the flesh. In your terms, the body is the living soul. Now the soul can live and does in many forms, some physical and some not. But while you are material, the body is the living soul. The body constantly heals itself, which means that the soul in the flesh heals itself. The body is often closer to the soul than the mind is because it automatically grows as a flower does, trusting its nature. I'm going to skip on down to the next dictation. Good evening, Seth. To begin dictation. Physical existence is valuable for many reasons, one being that the flesh is so responsive to thought and yet so resilient. There are built-in guidelines so that the body consciousness itself, while mirroring your negative images at times, will also automatically struggle against them. You must remember that you dwell always in a natural framework, which means that your thoughts themselves are as natural, say, as the locks of your hair. In what may seem to you to be an odd analogy, I will compare your thoughts with viruses, for they are alive, always present, responsive, and possess their own kind of mobility. Physically speaking, at least, thoughts are chemically propelled, and they travel through the universal body as viruses travel through your temporal form. Thoughts interact with the body and become part of it as viruses do. Some viruses have great therapeutic value. The physical body will often let down its own barriers to these, knowing they will counteract certain others that are not beneficial at the time. So-called harmful viruses are ever present within the body. You are very rarely vulnerable to any but a small percentage, though you carry within you traces of the most deadly of them all of the time. Viruses themselves undergo transformations completely unsuspected by medical men. If one virus disappears and another is found, it is never suspected that the first may have changed into the second. And yet through certain alterations of quite natural character, such is the case. So viruses can be beneficial or deadly according to the condition, state, and needs of the body at any given time. It is known that one disease can often cure another. Sometimes left alone, an individual will go from a serious disease through a series of less severe ones that are seemingly unrelated to the original problem. Now, in the context of usual Western learning, and with the introduction of modern drugs, you are in somewhat of a quandary. The body knows how to handle natural drugs coming directly from the earth, whether ground or boiled, minced or steamed. A large variety of manufactured drugs offer an unfamiliarity to the body's innate structure, which can lead to strong defense mechanisms. These are often aimed directly against the drug instead of the disease itself. Such a situation means that you must then use another drug to counteract the one just given. I am not suggesting that you not visit doctors or not take drugs of that nature, as long as you believe in the structure of medical discipline that the Western world has evolved. Your bodies have been conditioned to it through the use of such medications since birth. There are many casualties, but this is still a system that you have chosen, and your ideas still form your reality. No one dies who has not made the decision to do so, and no disease is accepted blindly. Put simply, your thoughts can be regarded as invisible viruses, carriers, sparks setting off reactions, not only within the body, but the entire physical system as you know it. Your thoughts are as natural as the cells within your body, and as real. They interact with one another as viruses do. While you are in this reality, there is no division between the mental, the spiritual, and the physical. If you think there is, then you do not sufficiently understand the spirituality of the flesh or the physical reality of your thought. You may take a break. Now, as stated, thoughts are as natural as any portion of the body. They are as much a part of nature as feelings are. But if you set up an arbitrary division, considering thoughts mental as distinguished from the physical, then your body may give a truer reflection of your being than your thoughts do. In the body's spontaneous functioning, you see the easy mobility of the soul, the going with that which I am, which is an indication of the soul's inner freedom, and yet innate sense of direction. All portions of the body's reality are versions in flesh of the soul's reality, even as all segments of the exterior universe mirror an internal one. The latter is as alive and natural and changing as the exterior world. Physical phenomena is only a portion of what nature is, and all realities are natural. In your terms, probabilities are extensions and variations on the growth principle that is quite obvious in your daily reality. Such growth is a natural manifestation, flourishing within your particular area of actuality, observable to your senses. Again, other entirely natural manifestations of that principle exist. Some can only be glimpsed in distorted form because of other natural conditions that you cannot perceive. Probabilities involve you with a rich psychological growth and development, present but not observable in your home ground. Any kind of existence happens within the context of nature, and nature includes the soul. Your definition of nature has simply been too limiting. It is natural to live after death, and natural to return the body to the earth, and then to form another. It is natural for your thoughts to be as quick, responsive, and alive as viruses. It is natural for you to have probable selves as well as reincarnational existences. When you consider ideas as mental and apart from nature, then you feel separated from nature itself. When you imagine a life after death as unnatural or supernatural, then you feel divorced, cut off, and bewildered. You must try to understand that there are different kinds of nature within nature, and a capital for the last one. Your physical life, your human nature, is, in your terms, dependent upon a time when you were not. You must realize that not being, in that connotation, is quite as natural as physical being. Your existence before and after death is as much a normal phenomena as your present life. End of dictation. Now, do you want a break? Yes, then I will continue on another line. Okay, I will start with the next session, 632, and skip down to the dictation. Good evening. Good evening, Seth. For now, dictation. As most of you know, the atoms that compose your cells, as well as the cells themselves, constantly die and are replaced. The stuff of the internal organs changes, and yet they always retain their form. Their identity is intact. So is your own identity secure in the midst of all these births and deaths of which your conscious self is unaware. The memory of all its experiences is retained. Each cell remembers its past, though all of its parts have been and are being continually replaced. As your cells have their own memories, so the conscious mind has a more overt kind of memory. Your conscious thought acts as triggers, bringing both kinds of memory into activation. Within your physical being, then, each joyful, expanding, traumatic, and tragic past event lies indelibly written. In your terms, this is your working material, the memory of your physical being since the time of its conception in corporal form. There are, in your memory, the most complex organizations and associative frameworks that exist both in the depths of your cellular structure and in the highest reaches of your conscious activity. Earlier, I compared your thoughts to viruses. Think of them now as living electromagnetic cells, differing from the physical cells in your body only in the nature of their materialization. Your thoughts direct the overall functioning of your body's cells, even though you do not consciously know how those cells operate. That work is unconscious. Every physical cell is in its way a miniature brain, with memory of all of its personal experiences and of its relationship with other cells, and with the body as a whole. In your terms, this means that each cell operates with an innate picture of the body's entire history, past, present, and future. Now, this picture is ever-changing and mobile. An alteration in just one cell is instantly noted by the body consciousness, the combined consciousnesses of the cells, and the future effect perceived. This information is used together with all other data from the body and a prediction made. This body prediction is then assessed, and on more levels than it is possible for me to explain. Briefly, the picture is shown in the invisible arena where flesh and spirit meet. This arena is not a place, of course, but an inner state of gestate consciousness. This state is brought about through certain interactions that occur deep within the body. Magnetic structures are formed. They are created on a physical level through certain activations of the nerves in which the normal patterns are jumped, so to speak, and images are formed. The nerves in the cellular structures at their tips take pictures. These are all assembled and used to form the larger picture of the body's condition. These are not images as you think of them, but highly coded information, electromagnetically imprinted, that would not appear as images to the physical eye. In any case, they cannot be perceived except by the body. But this procedure is so far superior to anything that you know that the body, therefore, actually takes precognitive pictures of its future condition, as if the body situation at the time were projected into the future. This predictive picture is then set against two models. First, it is checked against the body's ideal standard of health in its individual case, its own greatest fulfillment. Then it is checked against the image of the body sent to it by the conscious self. Correlations are made instantaneously. In an organizational framework that would certainly be envied by the most advanced technological concern, communications spring back and forth with great rapidity. The body makes whatever changes are necessary in order to bring the two images in line with the present corporal condition. Say, there is a built-in equilibrium to some extent. The body is so responsive to conscious thought that it has its own innate system of self-preservation and its own guiding image of fulfillment. Say that at the age of 4 you were severely injured. An accident took place at 3:20 in the afternoon. It was snowing. Your mother was roasting a turkey. Imagine that you burned a hand severely. Though all of the tissue in that hand has often been completely replaced by the time you were 27, for example, the identity within each of those present cells remembers that injury. There were countless other events that happened to you on different afternoons at the same hour, both before and after that one. The cells within your hand contain within themselves memories your conscious mind would be dazzled to behold. Yet remember that the cells in your 27-year-old hand are in no physical way the same cells that experienced any of those events. In some underground of sensation, however, the buried evidences of stimuli and reaction experienced during those numberless past afternoons still exist. Some of those memories will certainly be played back to affect what you think of as your current experience at 27. Your conscious thoughts and habits regulate which of them will intermix into the maelstrom of the present. You consciously give the signals for reaction. It is not the other way around. Past events do not intrude in this manner unless they are beckoned by the conscious expectations and thoughts that exist within your mind. Those unconscious memories will be activated according to your current beliefs. You will be replenished and renewed as your thoughts motivate joyful body sensations and physical events. Or you will be depressed as you bring into your awareness unpleasant past body happenings. At times, of course, both can be highly beneficial. A conscious realization of danger, for example, will call up all information dealing with similar situations so that the body can deal with it at once from the vast bank of its living memory. But constant unpleasant thoughts put the body into a state of turmoil that is unrealistic, and in turn force it to reactivate such old patterns. The living flesh is quite aware of certain facts that escape you on a conscious level. It knows it dies and is reborn constantly, and yet retains itself. I use the term dies and is reborn because you make sense of them, but the body does not. The body, while being always itself, comes and goes. It does not feel less or diminished when a cell dies, for it is also in the process of forming a new one. For a moment, think of your body as one large cell in the moment of its being. You, the larger self, have many bodies, each turning into the other as one dies and is reborn. Yet you, capital U, maintain your identity and your memory, even as the smallest cell in your present body does. This is merely an analogy, but it will explain your body's concept of itself, for as a whole it knows it dies, as now its portions do, but is also aware of its future transformation. Within this framework, it protects and maintains its own stability and survival. At one level of your being, there is a common ground where body consciousness merges with that higher consciousness from which your own identity springs. This is the ground of your being, where soul and flesh meet, both in time and out of it. Now, because you are conscious of being, you form your physical reality through conscious thought. I am quite aware that I am repeating myself again and again when I make that statement, but you need to be reminded that you are not at the mercy of unconscious events. You have the body's innate wisdom behind you, and it will always try to correct your errors. Those suggestions will appear in numberless ways, some quite physical to your way of thinking, and some through other means. The body may of itself begin to crave certain foods, for example, or fresh air, or exercise. These are simple instances, and later we will be more specific. You may have dreams urging you to move in such and such a direction or pointing out areas in which corrections should be made. Often such dreams bring about behavior changes whether or not you remember them in the morning. You may request dreams in what proper direction is given, and you will receive them. If you ask on the one hand, however, and do not believe in the therapeutic nature of dreams on the other, you will short-circuit any such activity. In such a case, you are not being honest with the contents of your conscious mind. Instead, you are saying, I will have a dream to help me, and yet I do not believe I can have such a dream. In all cases, when you are concerned about your health, there is a choice of directions for you to follow. The living flesh is yours. It is the materialization of your soul, and through the body the soul will provide you with those answers you require. In the next chapter, we will begin to discuss those methods that can be used to refresh and heal the body, and that will help you arouse from within the physical form those memories and experiences most to your advantage. For best results, you must remember that ideas are as alive as the cells within your hand. End of chapter. That was a transitional chapter. We will take a brief break, and you can have the beginning of the next chapter or personal material as you request. Okay, maybe I'll read this. We better make it personal then, I guess. During break, Jane received some insights from Seth as to what would follow in Chapter 8, that, for instance, when good thoughts from an individual's present life were activated, they would draw upon similar ones from his or her reincarnational personalities. This was a very interesting idea, aside from being a comforting one. I shouldn't recall Seth presenting the concept in just that way before. But as things developed, he didn't begin alluding to it until Chapter 10. As often happens, the personal material that follows break has good general application, and Jane decided she'll use it to make certain points in ESP class. When she read the first page of this session after I typed it, Jane said, "It looks like I distorted that bit about atoms dying. I don't think it should be put that way, I guess. Seth must have a lot on that. All I remember is that matter can't be created or destroyed. And those particles that break off atoms and are released as radiation don't die, as far as I know, although they might evolve. In our reality, the first law of thermodynamics tells us that energy, matter, can be changed from one form or another to another, but that it can't be created or destroyed. Although chemical change results in a new substance, the total weight of the ingredients involved remains practically the same. In such ordinary reactions, the amount of matter converted into heat is infinitesimal. In mathematical terms, Einstein revealed that mass and energy are equivalent to each other. When one is destroyed, the other is created. We've been especially interested in such material since Seth referred to the deaths of atoms and molecules in the 625th session in Chapter 5, but we haven't asked for more detail because the subject matter is somewhat outside the scope of this book. In physics, it is known, for instance, that the proton, an elementary particle in the atomic nucleus, has an exceptionally long life in years, the number 1 followed by 24 or more zeros. When Seth finished his personal reality, we plan to ask him to reconcile such data from our world with the root assumptions or basic agreements in his own reality. At the same time, Jane and I read these days that physicists are beginning to question the immutability of such rigid laws as those applying to thermodynamics, causality, etc., saying that they are either in error after all or need to be modified. Those who care to might see Seth's discussion of internal electromagnetic sound and light values in the 625th session referred to earlier, as well as his material on EE, electromagnetic energy units, in Chapter 20. Chapter 8, Health, Good and Bad Thoughts, and the Birth of Demons, Session 633. Tonight, I asked Jane if Seth would deliver his promised letter for correspondence. We sat for the session at 9:05. At the same time, the city's fire whistle began to sound insistently. Then we heard several other sirens. Jane spent a large part of her working time today rereading her manuscript, The Physical Universe as Ideal Construction, and writing new material related to it. She received the original in a transcendent state on the evening of September the 9th, 1963. The event initiated her psychic development. Almost 10 years after its conception, the work still serves as a touchstone for her, and today Jane discovered concepts in it that she'd been blind to earlier. For more on ideal construction, see the Seth material and Seth Speaks. Good evening. Good evening, Seth. Now, we will begin with a letter. Dear friend, I appreciate your interest in my work and sessions. I also am aware of your quite natural and human need to translate philosophy into daily life and action. The ideas, however, are tools given to you for your use in your own way. The more often you use these mental implements, the more proficient you become in developing and fulfilling your own unique gifts. There are those in your world to whom you can turn for help often, friends, confidants, or doctors, psychologists, and psychics. According to where you are, any of these persons may be of assistance. While such help may be welcome, the kind of value I offer is of a different nature. In larger terms, one of my most important messages is simply this: you are a multidimensional personality, and within you lies all the knowledge about yourself, your challenges and problems that you will ever need to know. Others can help you in their own way, and at certain levels of development, such help is necessary and good. But my mission is to remind you of the incredible power within your own being, and to encourage you to recognize and use it. To this end, through Rupert, I am producing the continuing body of the Seth material, and books, each in a different way geared to these goals. In my present book, The Nature of Personal Reality, a Seth book, I am including techniques that will allow you and thousands of others to use these ideas in normal daily living, to enrich the life that you know and to help you understand and solve your problems. While it may not seem so at the present, the greatest gift I can give you is to reaffirm the integrity of your own being. I say this also because I am aware of your present status, even as other portions of your own entity are. Rupert has only so much time available, and much must be taken into consideration. I am personally aware of your letter. Rupert cannot answer all mail personally, however, or his work and mine could suffer. I am composing this note, therefore, to let you know that I hold you in my mind and that energy is automatically sent out to you when your letter is received and when this reply is sent. The energy will help release your own understanding and healing abilities, or help you in whatever particular area help is required. Such energy is always available, whether you write to me or not. Such energy is constantly at your own command. If you believe me, then you will realize that others at best can only act as intermediaries, middlemen, and are in that respect not needed, for the energy is always available in your life. I simply give you that which is your own. Seth. Now, give us a moment, and that is the end of our letter. Some people you will want to send it to, and some you will not. Others you can take care of yourself. We think it of interest to include Seth's letter in this book since it stresses the importance of beliefs. Dictation. Try a simple experiment. The results will be self-explanatory. Think of a sad event from your life. Similar feelings will soon follow, and with them, memories of other such unpleasant episodes strung together through association. Scenes, odors, words, perhaps half forgotten, will suddenly come upon you with new freshness. Your thoughts will activate the appropriate feeling. Beneath your awareness, however, they will also trigger the cell's ever-present memory imprints of stimuli received when those events occurred. There is to some extent now a cellular memory playback, and on the part of the entire body, the recognition of its state at that time. If you pursue such sorrowful thoughts persistently, you are reactivating that body condition. Think of one of the most pleasant events that ever happened to you, and the reverse will be true, but the process is the same. This time the associated memories are pleasant and the body changes accordingly. Remember, these mental associations are living things. They are formations of energy assembled into invisible structures through processes quite as valid and complicated as the organization of any group of cells. Comparing them with cells, they are of briefer duration, generally speaking, though under certain conditions this does not apply. But your thoughts form structures as real as the cells. Their composition is different in that no solidity is involved in your terms. As living cells have a structure, react to stimuli, and organize according to their own classification, so do thoughts. Thoughts thrive on association. They magnetically attract others like themselves, and like some strange microscopic animals, they repel their enemies or other thoughts that are threatening to their own survival. Using this analogy, your mental and emotional life forms a framework composed of such structures, and these act directly upon the cells of your physical body. Now let us return to Augustus, for here we find again in one individual an excellent example of the way in which seemingly non-physical thoughts and beliefs can affect and alter the corporeal image. And you may take a break. Now I will move down to where he talks again. First of all, Augustus had been told in various ways, quote, "You think too much. You should be doing something physical, involved in sports, more outgoing." Such repeated remarks with other childhood conditions made him afraid of his own mental activity. He also felt unworthy, so how could his thoughts be good? Feelings of violence accumulated early, but in his family there were no acceptable ways of releasing normal aggressive feelings. When these built up into felt violent eruptions, Augustus was only the more convinced of his unacceptable nature. For some time in his normal state as a teenager, he tried harder and harder to be good. This meant the banishing of thoughts or impulses that were sexually inspired along various lines, aggressive or even just unconventional. Considerable energy was used to inhibit those portions of his inner experience. The denied mental events did not disappear, however. They increased in intensity and were kept apart from his safer, usual thoughts. In such a way, Augustus actually created a mental structure whose organization followed the principles I mentioned before your break. Under other circumstances and possessing different characteristics, another individual could damage a physical organ by literally attacking it as surely as it might be assaulted by a virus. Because of Augustus's particular temperament and nature, however, and his native, though conventionally undeveloped, creativity, he formed a structure rather than destroying one. In his normal state, he accepted only the beliefs he considered were expected of him. As mentioned, there was a time before his condition developed when his good self-thoughts and his bad self-thoughts vied for his attention, and the body tried desperately to react to constant, alternating, and often contradictory concepts. What developed was a situation in which the conflicting sets of thoughts and feelings finally took turns, though Augustus maintained his own integrity for most of the time. But those beliefs that he shoved away were, by attraction, instantly seized by the other mental structure, again, composed of ideas and feelings, combined into what you might think of as an invisible, cellular organization with all capabilities of reaction. In his normal condition, Augustus thought of his own powerlessness, for he had denied himself normal aggressive action and felt this weak. The beliefs activated the body's cellular memory, weakening the body and impeding its function. Yet for a time, while performance was dulled, it was steady. A balance was maintained that suited his purposes. He became afraid that the body would go out of control and commit violent action because he was, of course, aware of the strength of the denied thoughts and feelings. When a crisis situation arose or when he became lost in despair, an acceleration began that he pretended not to notice, and Augustus, too, would appear. Augustus, too, was filled with a sense of power because Augustus considered power wrong and set it aside from what he thought of as his normal self. Yet Augustus knew the body needed the vitality that he had denied it. Therefore, enter Augustus too, with his great ideas of extraordinary power, vigor, and superiority. I am keeping my Augustuses straight. I hope you are too. Yes. And with fantasies of exceptional heroism and the memories of all of those denied by Augustus himself. Aggressive action, conveniently forgotten by Augustus, was now recalled with exuberant glee by Augustus too. As a result, the chemical nature of the body was instantly revitalized. Muscle tone was greatly improved. There were changes in the amount of sugar in the blood and an alteration in the flow of energy throughout the body. I knew when Rupert interviewed Augustus that the young man identified Augustus too with the left side of himself. In its normal state, that side of the body contained more tension than the right. In Augustus too, the tension found release and the energy flow became more even after initial burst of activity. The longer Augustus too stayed, however, the weaker his position became, a fact recognized by Augustus and Augustus too. Augustus, you see, had to build up sufficient repressed thought and emotion because of a situation with which he could not cope. This threat would then bring about the emergence of Augustus too. The body behaves as you think it must behave, so Augustus and Augustus too, with their alternating patterns of behavior, cause the body to react in quite different ways. Forget now that in this case such a division occurred and imagine instead the successive thoughts and feelings that you possess. When you feel weak, you are weak. When you feel joyful, your body benefits and becomes stronger. Augustus's case simply shows in exaggerated form the effects of your beliefs upon your physical image. If you think, aha, then from now on I will only think good thoughts, and therefore be healthy, and inhibit my bad thoughts or do anything at all with them, but think them, then in your own way you are doing what Augustus did. He began by believing that some of his thoughts were so evil that they must somehow be made non-existent. So inhibiting what you consider as negative thoughts, or assuming that they are so terrible, is no answer. The chapter is to be called Health, Good and Bad Thoughts, and the Birth of Demons. And you may take your break. And I'm going to use this time now because I've made this a rather long one. And I'll start right here with now your beliefs about what is desirable and what is not. Okay, that's where I'll start the next one.